Throughout his campaign, Donald Trump tried very hard to distance himself from Project 2025, claiming that he had absolutely nothing to do with the Heritage Foundation's 900-page blueprint for remaking America. But in just the first week of his second administration, many of Trump's actions seemed straight out of the Project 2025 playbook, including his aggressive approach to immigration. In the past few days, military troops have been deployed to the southern border. Migrants are being deported on military planes, and arrest operations are ramping up. Immigration and Customs Enforcement told NBC News that they made 538 arrests yesterday. That's nearly double the average number of daily arrests made under the Biden administration. These arrests took place all across the country in cities like Buffalo, New York, Chicago, St. Paul, Salt Lake City, San Francisco, and Denver. And while in Newark, New Jersey, the mayor is blasting an ICE raid that took place at a local small business. He says multiple people were detained there, including U.S. citizens. A military veteran was also detained, as well as undocumented individuals. And he claims that the agents did not have a warrant to conduct the raid. And all of this comes as the Trump administration warns that it is only just beginning. Joining me now to discuss all of this is Maria Hinojosa, founder of Futuro Media, and Lee Gillert, deputy director of the ACLU's Immigrant Rights Project. Lee, what do we make of these raids? How are they different from what we saw under the Biden administration, and what is it likely to look like going forward?
Yeah, well, right now we're trying to figure out exactly what's happening in New Jersey, but we are preparing for these types of raids across the country. And so we are getting information out to all the ACLU affiliates, to as many NGOs as we can, to be monitoring on the ground. Are they bringing warrants? Are they just arresting people without warrants? Are they profiling? Are they using excessive force? So we'll be looking at all that. I mean, one of the dangers of people thinking everything is illegal is not everything's going to be illegal, unfortunately. The immigration laws are very harsh, but what we want to do is document it, because I genuinely believe the American public didn't know exactly what they were saying when they wanted mass deportations. You know, he painted all immigrants as criminals. When they see mothers with children being dragged out of their house, I hope the American public will push back. So we will look for all the legal violations and enforce them, but we also want to make sure that you all are, and we are documenting it, so the American public can really see what it looks like in practice to say, we're going to kick all these families out, even families with no criminal convictions.
Right. Maria, the scale of this is horrific, but it actually is lower than the raids that occurred when Donald Trump first took office. So in 2017, there were 675 people detained when Donald Trump took office in 2017. Does this indicate that most of the discussion around immigration by the incoming or the new Trump administration is really performative, that their desire or their appetite to conduct mass deportation is actually not matched by their ability to carry this out right now?
And that's part of the struggle, Melissa, is that I don't want to be a part of his performance, right? I don't want to be a part of the theater that he's trying to create, right? On the other hand, there are raids that are happening. On the other hand, there are people who are resisting, which is really important. And all of my conversations with grassroots people are, we're getting ready, we're prepared, know your rights, you don't have to open the door. You know, they can say that they're police, immigration agents, they're not police. And so I would say that they are impersonating police, which is unlawful. But, you know, what we saw in Chicago, they attempted to come into a school in a predominantly Black and Latino community, back of the yards, and the principal was like, not here, it's not going to happen. So this is the interesting part for me that we should be documenting, is when people are saying it's not going to happen, not on my watch, you're not going to cross me. But I'm not so sure, Lee, if people will actually get upset once they see the mothers and the babies crying, because, you know, they were
We've seen that before.
We've seen that before. And so, you know, will they draw the line? This is what we're all going to witness and figure out what happens next.
So, Lee, one thing we haven't seen is sort of the militaristic aspect of this. So we have now seen troops deployed to the southern border to stop unlawful crossings there. We have now seen, for the first time in recent memory, U.S. military aircraft being used to actually take migrants out of the country, to deport them using the force of the military. What do you make of the introduction of the military into what has traditionally been an ICE enforcement.
Right. I think it's extremely unfortunate and sends a bad signal to everyone, including the military, that this is what your mission is now. But I think one point that's important to keep in mind, and I think you're alluding to this, is the difference between military support, logistical support, and actually going out there and doing arrests. And so we are concerned that they are going to pass invoke the Insurrection Act and say, you, the military, not just do logistical support, but go out there and start making arrests. And that would be a sad day for the United States. So we're looking for that very closely. We're not happy about them using all the military all over like this in such a large scale. But I think it's a whole other step if you see the military on our streets starting to enforce the immigration laws with actual arrests.
And just to put a line under that, like you can use the military to assist with immigration concerns, but the invocation of the Insurrection Act would actually be about using the military for peacetime domestic transactions. And that's the problem.
That's a critical point, exactly, that you just made.
All right. So, Maria, within 24 hours of Donald Trump's inauguration, 22 states, 2 cities, and a group of nonprofits, including the ACLU, filed lawsuits to block one of a dozen immigration-related executive orders that Donald Trump has signed. On the ground, how are grassroots organizations responding to these lawsuits? Is there going to have to be sort of a complementary role between the grassroots organization and the legal organizations in fighting this and resisting?
Oh, there obviously is, but I wanted to make one point, which is, so to be clear, the Border Patrol is the largest law enforcement agency in the United States. So they are not lacking for money or resources. They're going to say we can't, but then they're incompetent and they don't know how to do their job. And more money is spent on immigration detention and deportation than all federal law enforcement agencies combined, more than the ATF, more than the FBI. So American citizens, American residents need to understand that throwing the military into this is completely unnecessary. Also, it plays into the notion that people who are crossing on the border, which I've been to, are
invading.
Yeah, but they cross and they literally kneel at the wall to say, thank you, I made it. They are no threat to the American public. And we know this because we've talked about it, Melissa. This is not a crime problem. This is not, there is no crime out of control. They are saying that it's an immigration problem. And grassroots organizations have been preparing for this. But honestly, when I'm at home and I'm thinking about all of this, I'm like, how are the lawyers? I'm actually worried about lawyers. I'm not even thinking about the journalists. I'm like, how are the lawyers going to handle this? How are the grassroots going to handle this? They're going to do the best that they can. And again, unless they have a warrant, you don't open the door. You don't give your name. You don't collaborate, right? Which even as a journalist to say this is problematic, but this is what's being communicated on the grassroots. So we shall see what is the eternal struggle in the United States between justice and repression.
Right, Lee, I'm going to give you the last word. What are the lawyers worried about? I mean, you have a federal judiciary that has been stocked with movement conservatives. What do you think the chances are for these lawsuits? Yeah,
as someone who's been doing this for over 3 decades, I am not going to say the judiciary won't step up. I still believe that where we make the arguments, we make them well, and we show that something's unlawful, the courts will be there. And so we're going to just keep pushing lawsuits where we think it's illegal. And I'm not going to say we can't win.
All right. That's Maria Hinojosa and Lee Gellert from the ACLU. Thank you so much for joining us.